Okay, so this is one of the second interview podcasts that I'm doing. Just going to leave a space for the background noise. Okie dokie. Hello and welcome to A Wealthy Life. My name is Vicky Wishay and I have got with me, or I'm very honoured to have with me today, Josh Greco, all the way from the States. We met podcasting. He interviewed me and brought me onto his show. And I'm going to explain why I've got Josh in a minute. Let me just introduce Josh to you first of all. So he is a business coach, and you're going to go, oh, Vicky, a business coach. Yeah, but this is different. And the reason it's different is because, well, no, this is cheeky, but the reason it's different is because Josh and I have some very aligned beliefs around what makes success. So therefore, as far as I'm concerned, that makes him a great coach because he and I think the same things. But just sticking to this, so he uses something called Mindscan, and this was an assessment that when I went onto his podcast, he just sent me over the link and said, here, do you want to take this? This is something that we share with people. And I thought, oh, I'm a sucker for taking something. Yeah, I love it. I love it. Anything that will help me understand me more. And then we had the phone call and it was so weird. It was as if Josh had known me my whole life. In fact, Josh knew me better than I knew me and my family knew me. That's how good this Mindscan thing was. And I knew from that second when we had that call and he started telling me about me in a way that I went, oh my, that explains everything about me, that I knew that this is someone I wanted to have on the call. So I hope I've bigged him up sufficiently and know that you are going to love listening to him. Josh, welcome to the show.
Vicky, thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to having some fun here today.
Yeah, and I think if you noticed, Josh has an accent. So tell us a bit about where you're based, Josh.
Yeah, so currently in Charlotte, North Carolina, but originally from the Buffalo, New York area. So I've been living in Charlotte for about 10 years now. But yeah, just a little hop, skip, and jump over the pond here.
Yeah, hop, skip, and a jump. Yes, 8 hours and followed by the misery of jet lag. Yeah, hop, skip, and a jump. So we're going to be talking today around mindset. And I know that's sort of very overused phrase, but the way I look at it, not to use the word mindset, is that understanding yourself, how you think and what you value is really important, because then it shapes your understanding of your values and it helps you create your goals. How does this manifest in your business?
That's such a great question. I think it starts with that. It starts with any person who's looking to grow or expand their knowledge or income or time. It comes with the basic belief system that we can influence that, right? So I'm assuming that anybody who's clicking on one of your episodes, Vicky, is already what I might term awake to where they've thought about or they've come to this realization that they have control over their life. I think at a certain point, right, it's hard to remember when that wasn't the case, but there was a time when that wasn't the case, right? I think of school as an example. I'm just kind of branching off here, but then I'll come back to answer your question. But school, right? School, you knew that when you got to the end of a grade that you would go to the next grade, right? Your life is planned out for you. I think maybe for me, that moment was when I graduated from college or university, to where I was like, oh my gosh, I have influence over my life. I have to make a decision that will impact what my future well-being will be. And that's when it started for me. So I started exploring, oh, I have control over this. So what does that mean? How can I influence that to my greatest potential? And I think this is a cool conversation to have, whether you've just arrived to that stage of awakeness or alertness, or you've been studying it for decades. It's the same principles. It's the same things that we come back. And that's why we talk about, focusing on what's most important. So you talk about how does that show up in business? Well, it's the same concept. We still want more of something. I have a coach in my company who says, I don't want everything. I just want more, right? We always want more of something, right? Maybe it's more income in the beginning, but once you get more income, maybe you don't like the work-life balance you've struck, right? So you want more time. So it's always something more. You're looking for upgrades or a way to get the edge and live a better life. So I think anybody who shows up and wants to be coached as admitting or is excited about knowing that there's more out there for them, and they can accelerate that process through coaching.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. It's very much, as you say, it's that awareness that there is change possible. Because it's interesting to use the word more, because I've started using the word enough. Because if we use the word more all the time, then it implies that there is a lack. And actually, we've already got enough. We have plenty. And if we recognize that we have plenty, then we can have more than enough if we want. We can even have much more than enough if we want, but know that already know that life's good. I mean, anybody listening to this podcast already has more than enough. And I can guarantee that they do, because they have some form of technology that they are listening to us on or watching us on. And also, so therefore they can afford that technology. And also they have the time, even if it's while traveling, they still have the time to listen to us. So they've got a lot in their lives already, but we're so driven by media, aren't we, to want more and more. I want to get back to this idea of knowing. And you talked about how when you were moving from school to college or graduating college, that you suddenly knew that you had this opportunity to shape your life. And I was thinking to myself, as you were taking that, did I realize that when I left school? I don't think I did. I think I was just in a groove, and I'd been, if I use the phrase, very well trained at school. So school was there to teach me things like reading, writing, arithmetic, blah, blah. And then at the end of that, the purpose of that was for me to get a job. So obviously I was going to get a job. There's an expectation when you're 16 that you get a part-time job. And then when you leave school, when you're 18, that obviously either that part-time job becomes full or you move from the part-time job to a full-time job. Okay, fine. So there was going to be this job. And then when you get the job, the next thing is that you get some money together, and then you get a car probably, and then eventually you get a house, and then with the car or the house comes debt, so then you have to keep working, and you just keep going. And actually I didn't have any form of self-awareness. I wish we could go in a time machine and take your assessment on me when I was 18 to see whether I just didn't realize I had any self-awareness because I didn't have that word. Because that's the other thing, is it's about language, isn't it? But for me, it was when I got made redundant, which was 2000 and I think 2016, I got made redundant. And I, for the first time in my life, had someone take away my security. Because even though I'd been divorced by that didn't take away my security. That was a choice. Whereas this was someone not giving me any choice. So your story was about recognizing choice, and mine was I suddenly had the choice removed from me by that job, that thing I'd been trained to do, going. And then I suddenly went, well, now I feel you've taken away my choices because you've taken away my money. I'm never going to give anybody that power again. And that's, so I went down like a different line to you. So it's quite interesting to look at how these two converge or merge or actually run parallel or something to one another.
Absolutely. I think that's such a great example of an experience that you had, right? So my experience might have been school, like that's what did it for me, right? So transitioning made me awake with like, oh, I have control, right? So you needed to feel the non-control to know that that's something that you wanted. But I think we all have stories like that where like those are the awake stories. That's different for everybody, but at a certain point you realize, oh, I've been giving this power away. Like this was mine. I didn't even know, right? I didn't even have the emotional intelligence to understand that until I felt the lack of it. And now that I feel that, I'm ready to retake it, to take it over again.
I think that's really interesting, isn't it? That again, the use of the word awake there, because that might be something that really resonates with the listeners. As you said, by listening to this podcast, they've already somehow pre-selected themselves out of the masses as people who are curious about something, and it's either because they have already awoken, or they are awakening and recognizing that they want to shape their lives in some way. And that sort of brings us to that point where if we can enable the people that listen to this through both of our sets of work and you through your podcast, the people who listen to you, that if we can help people understand themselves more, then whatever success means to them, they can either have more success or find the success that they want more easily. Yeah, I think that's fascinating. So just tell me a little about the podcast that you run, because let's plug that for a minute.
Sure. Yeah, so it's called Truth Seekers, or hashtag Truth Seekers if you're searching for it. And the tagline is the simple secrets of the successful. So what we're trying to do is much like what this podcast is, right? Just share examples of the principles that people are practicing to achieve more in their lives. So we get fantastic guests on to share their story, because what we do is boil that down to a principle that somebody else can adopt in their lives. So we give that platform for people to share, because everybody's story is unique. That's what's so cool about people. But also that, under that umbrella, there's a lot of similarities that other people can connect with. And they might be going through similar things in their lives, and they hear these stories of other people who have either overcome or, again, become awake or achieve more. And hearing other people's vantage points can help them adopt similar things so that they can overcome the challenges in their lives as well. So that's what the podcast is all about.
That's brilliant. Thank you. And so do you find that you, either through the podcast conversations that you have or by working with the clients that you do, find that when people understand what's important to them, which really is their values, what's important to them, that there is a moment there that propels them forward? Or is it more about understanding themselves? So is it, the question is, what's more important, me understanding me, or the listener understanding themselves, or the listener understanding what's important to them?
Yeah, so hopefully this doesn't feel like a cop-out, but what I would say is it's going to be different depending on who the person is. So I'm not here to say this is more important or this is more important. My job as the business coach that I think is to create that fertile soil for you to come to those conclusions yourself. And I do that by a lot of intriguing questions, or maybe the power of questions. You mentioned language earlier, right? So you can get to the end of the day and ask a question like, why do I feel terrible? Or, what went wrong today? Versus, what am I grateful for? Or what happened today that I've taken for granted? And your mind has to come up with the answer depending on the question that you ask.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that's so powerful, right? So our language has so much influence over the way that we feel that, and so to go back and answer your question, what is maybe preventing you from getting that breakthrough? Which one of it could it be for you? And it's just a part of that exploration process. And we're just looking for that light bulb to go on with, like, that's what I need, right? Or that's what it is. I need to focus on that a little bit more. And it's different for everybody.
Yeah, no, that's great. And it's interesting that you've said that, because just over the last few episodes, I've been recording about questions. So one of the things that I do is I have on my phone an alarm set for 3:33 in the afternoon. Why 3:33? Because it's an unusual time. So some people, if you've got an alarm set at 3:30, that's just an ordinary time. But if it goes off at 3:33, then people might go, oh, what's she doing at 3:33? And the three numbers are very nice. And my phone doesn't ring and say the word alarm. It actually has a question put in there that says, how have I been successful today?
Oh, I love that.
And every day I ask myself that question at 3:33. And the great thing about 3:33 is you got enough time that you could easily have been successful, which is great. So then you got a great answer. But if you're stumped for some reason, you've still got enough hours left in the day that you can really just nail that thing that had been bugging you all day that you didn't complete, or that you didn't achieve, or you didn't get, or whatever it was, because you've still got several hours of the working day and several hours of the evening to actually nail it. So there's no way that you can go to bed not feeling successful, because A, you probably have been, but B, if you haven't for some weird reason, then you've still got enough time to do it as well. And then I've also gone on and recorded some questions about what is your primary questioning process? I mean, I always say, why should I listen to you? Why should I do this? And if I get the why, then I want to know what. because you've hooked me. And if you've then explained the what, then I'm interested in understanding the how. But don't tell me the how. Don't spend hours giving me all the details of why I should do it. And this is really interesting in a sales process. They always go through all this blurb. No, I don't want all of that. I just want to know, why should I buy it? Or why should I do this? Or why should I go here? Or why should I listen? So questioning is such a powerful, and I suppose that's why you're a great coach and I'm a bit more of a mentor, because I'm less asking questions and more bossing people around.
Yeah. I think questions are so key because people will give the answer, right? So my coaching is only as effective as if I know how to coach you. So if, I get that information just by asking those questions. People will share their perspective, and then it's easier to say, are you seeing this? Or have you thought of this? And those types of things. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So this little series of interviews that I'm doing at the moment are with 4 key people, yourself being one of those, where what I wanted to do was just bring in some other voices to the listeners of A Wealthy Life podcast and enable the listeners to hear some different perspectives from mindset and the importance of understanding yourself, the importance, as it's just come out of here, of good questions, to then sometimes we perform acts and we pursue a life maybe in a way that you were sort of saying you did through school, and the way I said, where I felt like I was just in a groove, I was just doing what I was told. And then at some point we go, oh, actually, maybe there's more, that awakening that you used. And then you can start to create a plan at the other end of it. But some other people, and this is where, as you were saying, everybody's different, may start straight out with a very clear passion and purpose. You imagine people who go straight to medical school because they've known that they always wanted to be a doctor, or some people join the forces because they always wanted to be in the forces, or whatever it is, they always wanted to be a fisherman or a singer, because some people just have that clarity at a different point in their lives, and then they follow their paths. So what do you think of the sentence, which is mine, that self-awareness is key to a happy and successful life? And be careful how you answer this one, because this is going to tie into Mindscan at the end of it.
Gotcha. Yeah. So awareness, I love that word so much, because everything starts with awareness, right? You can't get started unless you're aware of what's happening, or where you want to go, or what could be improved in your life. So quick aside, everything I do in my coaching practice, we call the AAA approach. So we have different stages of each of the A's. So the first A is awareness. That's the first stage of our coaching practice. The next one is taking action. And then the final one is achievement, or measuring the success. So everything starts with awareness, though. I can't coach somebody who's not coachable, or doesn't see that their life could be better or improved in some way, shape, or form. So awareness, these are all, it's the same term, right? Awake, becoming aware. It's recognizing that there is a way that you can influence your life, you have control over it, to improve it. It's all about how we feel, right? So that's part of the awareness, is I feel bad, I feel frustrated, I feel stuck, I feel something, right? And we get so good at ignoring those things, or just saying like, well, we make excuses. It provides my income, I can at least eat, there's this, there's that. There's a certain point where that doesn't become good enough, or that's such a foundational building block that we can grow from that, or there's more to it. I think of your example, right? I don't want to give that power of my income or earning potential to anybody else. I want control over that. So that's the awakeness, or the awareness of that part. Everything starts with that, the recognition that I'm here and I'd like to be somewhere else. Oh, Vicky, your audio, I think, may be cut out.
Very good. Yes, there was a plane went over, and I was trying to save the editors from doing that. Thank you very much. I'd had my thumb over it before to remind me to switch on. I'll just do that piece again. I think you're absolutely right. That point where you were talking about awareness and an awakening, and then from that, good questions can come. And from the good questions, the answers provide ultimately the action, don't they? So it sort of ties together. It's all about this set of interviews that I'm having. It's all about providing some different perspectives. So it's not all about my beliefs, because it can get a bit like that, can't it? Well, your podcast is different because you're always interviewing people, but my podcast is about a wealthy life, which is my definition of a life. And then it's me. So I wanted to bring in other voices to share their perspectives, because I'll learn through this conversation with you, and I learn through every conversation that I have with someone. Equally, I learn sometimes through my own podcasts with myself. I say things that I go, right, now I've got a new perspective. It's sort of like bypassed my conscious brain and came straight out my mouth, and I'm hearing it for the first time, and it's quite interesting. But this idea that we can break out from the path that, as I described how my life was, I felt like I was on this journey. Makes it sound a pleasurable thing to me. As a journey is a good word, whereas I felt I was in a groove, which was something that has got sort of containing walls around it, and I was just going forward without any sense of what was to the left or the right of me, because I'm very, put me on a path and I will go for it. That's my driving force, is to be on a mission all the time. And as long as the mission I'm on is a lovely mission, then my life is wonderful. But if I'm on a mission that I'm unaware of or it's not in my control, it wasn't my design, and then all of a sudden you wake up at the other end. And for a lot of people, they don't wake up until they're in their sort of their 40s, their 50s, or some even in their 60s. And then at that point, so much life has gone past. And so the idea of this conversation and this podcast is really for people who stumble on it, if they're not already awake, to waken them up to the idea that you do have values and priorities in your life, and you can choose to build a life around those values and priorities, and from that become more successful. And it starts with the self-awareness, the awareness, the awakening that we've been talking about. And I hinted when I asked that last question that we were going to be leading into Mindscan. So Mindscan is that assessment you very kindly shared with me. Do you just want to explain in very novice terms a bit about what Mindscan is then?
Sure. Yeah. Because there's many different assessments out there, right? And they're all unique in their own way. But I think, I'm going to describe it over the next couple of minutes, but it's not going to hit home unless you try it, right? It's the restaurant example. I could tell you about a restaurant and you would maybe forget about it. I can show you people eating at the restaurant, that might influence you to remember it, but taking you to the restaurant and having you eat the food is going to make it a memorable experience for you. So maybe that could be a little teaser. I'm willing to share this Mindscan with anybody who's willing to take it. So I can offer that link to you. And then whenever you post the episode, I'm more than happy to engage and schedule a review with anybody who's looking to learn more about themselves. So that's the frame up front here.
And I would just say there, just as a bit of a big up for this. As I say, I will take lots of tests. I don't mind lots of tests because I feel that you learn something from it. This was the most unusual. This wasn't, are you a banana or a bird? It wasn't any of that. Do you like this color, that color? It wasn't even multiple choice. In this situation, would you choose A, B, or C? It was so different, the questioning process, that I was just getting through this going, how on earth? Because at the same time as doing it, I'm trying to work out, well, what sort of an answer am I going to get from these questions? And could not believe how accurately you defined me and described me. Go on, do more. Tell us more.
Sure. So at the very basic level, right, here's the purpose of the assessment. It was created to get a better understanding of how our thoughts are influencing our life. All right, so maybe 3 different pillars that we can think of. Our thoughts influence our actions, which influence the way that we feel. All right, so we wanted to go back to the core, not we, but so we own the rights. Our company owns the rights to this assessment. It was created by a man by the name of Dr. Robert Hartman, who studied what we call formal axiology. All right, so it's just a fancy term for what we value. So you mentioned value systems. This is what we value in our subconscious thinking. So throughout our day, Vicki, we're making decisions on what we value over another thing by taking an action, right? I value showing up to this podcast because I wanted to have a conversation with you. All right. So I did that over maybe taking a nap or something else, right? Like I'm valuing this. This is highest priority. So I did it. I took the action. All right. So what this assessment is doing is making you think about those things that you don't really think about when you make those decisions. It's just a snap thing sometimes when we just decide to do something. Well, there's a whole level or layer underneath of what's happening that this is bringing a new level of awareness. There's that word again, to how that is working in our thinking. All right. So quite simply, I'll just describe what it is. So just ranking statements in order from what we say good to bad, right? Just keep it as simple as possible. So the statements, I can give a couple of examples. Anything from, something really positive, or like the nature of the world makes sense to me, right? To something neutral, like a uniform, just that statement, right? Or a technical improvement. And then there's some really negative or suffering things, right? So something like torturing a person in a concentration camp versus burning a heretic at the stake. So these are pretty, terrible things, some of them, but you're ranking them in order, and it's forcing you to make a decision of something over another thing. All right. So there's beauty in this assessment in two ways, and it's complexity and it's simplicity. So the complexity is all the math behind it. So Dr. Hartman, I think in his genius, in his studies, was able to assign mathematical value to statements, to words. I think that's so cool. I'll never even understand how he did that or get over it. But the simplicity is in the results of what we're prioritizing in our thinking just by ranking these statements in order. All right. And then maybe the biggest takeaway of all is it can change. Like the more that we focus on this and become aware, we can make these changes. So I don't want to give too much away, but the results are, they're categorized, like we have to have some sort of frame or lens that we're understanding the results through. So his theory is that we're either relating to other people or to ourselves, or we're thinking in terms of getting results and taking action, or we're thinking and we're slowing down and we're putting processes in place and procedures. And why we use this in business is because you can't really have a business thought outside of those three pillars. Relator has to do with your customers and your clients and the connectivity that you have, but also internally with your coworkers and the people that you're managing. The doer is getting results and providing unique products for clients and taking action. So it can show you, are you cautious with your action? Are you a go-getter and a doer? And then what that means for you. And then the thinker is, any business that has to scale, you got to have some rules and process and procedure. Now, this is typically the one that people have the most resistance to, right? Because if you have a process or a rule that is preventing you from taking care of people or preventing you from taking an action, you might view it negatively. But we all know that in order to scale a business or to make it really successful or to have people on the same page, you need to have this understanding and some process and procedure to your business. So I got into the weeds a little bit there, but it's meant to bring a new level of understanding in a very visual way. So there's visual results that you can read, and then it has the most intuitive, like, this is what it means for you. And if I'm projecting and maybe putting words in your mouth, that was the most useful. It was like, oh my gosh, like that is the way that I think. And so what do I do with it? And that's where the coaching comes in.
It was just brilliant. It was, you explaining how I understood myself, but also how I understood things generally, making it so that I could understand my communication style. I don't know that I've necessarily been able to fully adapt my communication style, but I am now much more conscious of the fact that I'm aware of things in a way that maybe other people aren't aware of things, and that I need to think about how I express myself. Now, if you imagine that as a leader, that would be really powerful, or, a leader, a manager, whatever, really powerful to understand that. Maybe there are a good few people in our government, not to get too political about it, that could do with taking your test as well. Josh, I just want to say thank you very much. And I also want to pre-thank you for allowing some of my listeners to take the Mindscan assessment. And obviously, if they choose to, then take some of your very precious time to go through the assessment. And I would recommend that. Don't just take Mindscan and then leave it at that. Book that call with Josh, because his explanations took the printed report that I could have just read, but just took it to another level. And as I'm saying, and Josh is agreeing with me, this idea of awareness, self-awareness, is the thing that is going to make such a powerful difference in the way that the rest of your life, really, not to put too fine a thing on it, is going to pan out. That by having this level of awareness, recognizing that you have this choice, and really that you have a control or a way to control the actions that you take by looking at this inner you and making better decisions and taking better actions, and therefore having better results, has got to be exponentially, creating a better life, bringing the life that you want closer to you, sooner for you, and everything else. Josh, have I missed out anything that you would like to share with the listeners around this sort of whole idea of awareness, awakening?
You covered all of it, Vicki. It's been a pleasure. I always enjoy just talking about this stuff, right? Because it's my favorite topics to talk about. So that might just be my message to your listeners. If you like this, go get more of it, right? Figure out a way to engage with it further, because it's really rewarding and it leads to great things. So my assessment is just one example of something you could do. Of course, I'm biased and I would love for you to take it so that we could engage and I could meet you. But it doesn't have to be that either. Like, just figure out a way to get more of this in your life, because the more that you feed that hunger, the more satisfied and satisfying life will be. Oh, you're on mute again, Vicki.
I love that. That is such a great soundbite to finish with. I mean, that's really it. Become more aware, and then just, you put it so well. We're going to stop there. I really, really appreciate your time. Yes, you could have been having a nap, but I really appreciate your time on the conversation. I loved taking the assessment. I loved having the conversation with you. I loved being on Truth Seekers, your podcast, and we'll make sure we put those links at the bottom there. Maybe the link to the conversation we had and the link to the wider Truth Seekers podcast. And you and Nick, so one of Josh's colleagues is called Nick, and he's actually a Brit that lives in America. Let's not hold that against him. It was great having a conversation with the pair of you. And yeah, I hope that between your podcast and the mindset element of the work that I do, that we can help more people awakening, because I think that's really what's going to not only change things on an individual level, but that's how we're going to change things going forward, isn't it? Because the people that are listening are parents, that it's their awakening that is going to support the children that are coming through to hopefully be more awakened in the first place. Because somewhere along the way, I think I lost all of this. Maybe way back in history, we were more awake than we were now. And we need to fight through sort of the social media and the media generally and wake up for ourselves.
I love that. Awesome, Vicki. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you.